because it starts the transcript. There, stop the transcript. Okay, so hello everybody. This is going to be a pre-recorded session. Today we've got Mark Robinson, and I've been super excited. I'm sure everybody's seen on LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok. I think Mark is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. So I'll just quickly briefly introduce Mark. So Mark is a criminal barrister at Garden Court Chambers, and he was actually a DJ, not a district judge, a music DJ for BBC Radio 1 Extra for 10 years, and released an album with, I believe it was Ministry of Sound, but I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong. And Mark is also the founder of Lawyers at Large, which aims to educate secondary school students and provide them with an opportunity to speak with barristers and do some advocacy training. I found Mark via LinkedIn. He's got a huge following as well, so I'm sure you won't mind if people follow him. But just maybe ask beforehand. But yeah, I found Mark, and I actually got the opportunity to see him advocate in Woolwich Crown Court when I was judge marshalling, and I was just completely mesmerised by his demeanour and his confidence. So I'm over the moon to have Mark on my little podcast. So Mark, do you want to just say hello to everybody who'll be watching?
Hi everyone. Yeah, a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you ever so much as well. Now, I extend the thanks, and I'm sure it's on behalf of everybody who's going to be watching, because I've had a lot of messages about people following you and your story as well. So if I introduce you correctly, is there anything else to say?
No, I'm criminal barrister at Criminal Defence from Garden Court, and then I also regulatory barrister, and that's run from New Park Court Chambers in Leeds. So best of both worlds and having my cake and eat it. And yeah, I recall you just said that you watched me when you were judge marshalling Woolwich Crown Court. I'd like to apologise for subjecting you to that. I'm sure it was absolutely awful, and it won't happen again.
Quite the opposite, actually. So actually, just a quick question: what do you prefer, if you can answer that question, criminal or regulatory and professional discipline?
Crime. I mean, I do a very discreet area of regulatory. It's more geared towards police misconduct. And so it's police misconduct, and I'm on the Metropolitan Police Misconduct panel, but I also represent officers by way of the Police Federation, and I've currently got a case against Thames Valley Police. So it's I have done work for NMC. I've done work for the GLC, which is General Optical Council, and I should have said Nursing Midwifery Council, but and I do that, but I kind of area of specialism, I'd say it's the police misconduct stuff, and then on the crime side of things, it is serious crime, as you probably gathered by now, homicide, murder, attempted murder, and then high value drugs cases, and serious sexual offence cases, and lots of firearm stuff as well. So that's where you find me.
And just off the back of that, do you think that police misconduct in what you've seen recently, I don't know how long you've done it for, but do you think that there's a real increase on it, it's on the rise?
Yeah, I think that the police forces are just trying to, the appropriate authority, as they're known, are just on a clear out. And if there's any misconduct, no matter how minor they're looking to get rid at the moment, they're clamping down. The police force that serves us needs to be of the highest standard, and I'll go further and say they should be beyond reproach themselves. And that's what's happening across the board. The standards are very high now. So yeah, I suppose it's a good thing.
I mean, I don't know if it's a bit of a touchy subject. I don't know, because I know some lawyers don't want to comment on it. But the case where the gentleman was shot in London, and the police stood trial for murder. I mean, what's your opinion on that, if you don't mind giving it? Obviously,
Look,
if you don't mind.
the point is it's due process. I know members of the Federation were not pleased that the officer even had to face a trial, but I think that no one should be above the law, and whether it's the police, whether it's politicians, whether it's any lawyers or anyone or judges, no one is above the law, and that's that, and I think it's the standard that we should set for our society. Of course, other societies in other parts of the world are losing sight of that, but in Great Britain we need to have sight of that, and I suppose in all things said and done, when one looks at the case of Kabbalah, which you reference, then it may be said that justice was done in the end. Others have a different view. I don't know. But the main thing is 12 jurors made the decision. It was due process, and I think it's the fairest system that we've got, and it's the only system we've got. So that's my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about asking you that touchy subject there. I know some people get really funny about answering questions on that, but I was just intrigued to see what your opinion would be on that. So I have read I'm for Talent, I hope I'm saying it correctly. Wrote I think may have conducted an interview with you and wrote an article about you and your life, and it was just nothing short of inspiring. So I don't want to go too much into detail, let you lead that, but in terms of your secondary school experience, how could you sum that up? So you didn't get any GCSEs or A levels, and here you are now, so super successful. I had two really super successful careers as well. How did you find education?
Right, a four-letter word, one that I can't say and one that I will say, which is crap.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, look, I didn't have the best experience, but I suppose you know what is obviously, if you weren't aware, I have dyspraxia, and so I wasn't aware that I had dyspraxia. I think no one knew what it was back when I was going to secondary school, and so that really answered a lot of the questions why I failed so abysmally in school and why I struggled so much.
Yeah.
And also, it is possible, although I've not been diagnosed, that I may have ADHD. I do have some traits. I do have the attention span of a goldfish to an extent. And I suppose with me, if I'm not interested in something,
Mhm.
I will switch off.
Yeah.
And fast forward to when I started my legal studies. I was in awe of the whole thing. And if I'm interested in a particular thing, then I'm all over it and I become a geek. And when it came to law, that's exactly what happened. I found basic education boring, and it wasn't um, due to lack of intelligence, which I was told in school, and clearly not the case now.
Not true.
But yeah, it was a write-off, and then I kind of found myself when I started music at 17 and DJing, and things progressed, and the music industry was well, and it did well, and yes, I was on the BBC. I DJed a total of 20 years, played around the world, had an album out, worked with remixed for David Guetta and Pitbull, and done some work with some amazing artists, and that was all good and well, but I think coming to the bar, I don't think I've never been so successful in life since I've come to the bar. I have to say that if I was, and I'm not saying I didn't do well as a DJ, but not in, if you do use my career as a barrister as a comparator, then if I was this successful as a DJ as I am as a barrister, a junior barrister, I'd still be DJing. And
Yeah.
I say that as someone who was on the BBC radio and
Yeah.
actually had a contract. So yeah, it's literally day and night. My career at the bar, doors open, and I'm amazed how well I've done in such a short space of time and the cases that I'm doing and the warmth from nearly everyone I've encountered. Everyone has been so kind and welcoming. And even though I'm slightly different and an outlier to the maybe the average barrister, everyone has been so kind and mostly really supportive to me, and I've been generally overwhelmed by it all. Like, yeah, I'm the most professionally happy I've ever been in my life.
Mhm. And in terms of what you've just said there about how well you're doing as a junior barrister, you've got even on Chambers' website, it talks about your acquittal rate, through the roof, for a junior barrister. And again, just a couple of days ago, you secured an acquittal for your client who was charged with attempted murder. So, how does that make you feel having such a high acquittal rate?
All right, so here's the thing. That was a profile that was done when I left my old Chambers Great James Street, which was a wonderful set. And
Yeah.
I missed it was a very collegiate set, and a smaller set. But when I left there, I'd not lost a case in about a year. I was just walking into court, and it's either I'm getting outright acquittals or they're offering no evidence. It was almost like some people used to suggest the Mark Robinson effect, and I've walked into courts and they just offer no evidence, and it was just an ongoing joke about me. But then when I got to Garden Court, the cases started to turn up and not get a bit more serious. And started to lose more cases back to back, and I'm like, oh God, what am I doing wrong? And then it's only of late I've had some really difficult cases, and the results have been really good. So before the attempted murder this week, the week before was a murder, and so the main thing I was fighting for was to get my client acquitted of murder. We had to take a hit on the manslaughter, but it's going to be a very light sentence we anticipate compared to what he would have been looking at. And again, before that, there was a big drugs importation case I did from Heathrow. On the face of it, bang to rights, but testing of the evidence for forensic cross-examination of the officer in charge of the case, and I got the client acquitted, and even I was stunned. And
That
and
is
then
unbelievable.
and then there was another serious sexual offence that I did, and again, it was so bad that myself and the other prosecutor were talking about dates for the sentencing, as was the judge, and then the jury came in and acquitted, and we couldn't believe it. And
Wow.
so things have started to turn around. But I would say for anyone coming into the profession,
Mhm.
the easier offences, you may get quite a lot of acquittal, but the more serious work you do, you're likely to get convicted because the more serious cases, the better the police are working on the case. You've got specialist units, especially homicide units, and generally they leave no stone unturned. And they are really, really good, experienced officers and forensic and experts and all that are called. And so for me, you know, if you get acquittals with those serious cases, you've done well. Generally, you may well end up getting convicted. So yeah,
And in terms of like where you've just said there about how the police will go into a different, working gear when it's more serious offences involved, do you see quite an obvious jump from, say, for example, GBH to attempted murder? Is there an obvious jump in how much police then would utilise resources and even discharge resources, start working super, super hard to
yeah.
make this case airtight?
Yeah, well, attempted murder and murder, you'd get a specific unit. The GBH is
Wow.
probably less so, but
Mhm.
sometimes a lot of the Section 18s, I've had people initially arrested for attempted murder, and then it ends up being a Section 18. In fact, I did one of those cases day before yesterday, and so what it is the realistic prospect of a conviction. Obviously, the CPS carry out their reviews and they have to look at whether, as I've just said, a realistic prospect of conviction. They'll have their stage test that they look into, and so they'll go for what they know they can secure a conviction rather than something which is a bit of a stretch. And I suppose with the acquittal a couple of days ago on attempted murder, it really was one of those cases where I'm not saying they were wrong to charge it, but it was, and it was in the public interest to charge it most definitely. But it was a bit of a stretch. There was nothing really that one could get their teeth sunk into, say this guy had the intention to kill. And I think the jury, it was a very, very good jury.
Yeah, and of course, so for people who are starting out early, isn't it correct that attempted murder there has to be an intention to kill,
Yes.
whereas murder it's intention to cause really serious harm or to kill.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
basically, if you plead guilty to a Section 18
Hmm.
and then your client, also the victim ends up dying, then you're likely to end up with a murder charge, and you're going to struggle to get out of that because you accepted going to commit serious harm to someone, i.e., Section 18. So it's a tough one, but yeah, it is. The more you do these cases, the more you learn. And attempted murder, the guidelines are really quite harsh. And I've literally seen someone get walloped more for an attempted murder, and that was the case before the last case, I think.
Hmm.
And yeah, they got 35 years with 5 year extended, and I've seen someone another murder case I did where they only got 22 years. And so the person who for attempted murder
Wow.
actually will actually serve longer in custody, even that's a determinate sentence, than the person that got a life sentence. And yeah, the attempted murder sentences are really high up, although generally they're determinate rather than life. But it's a lot. I mean, you're talking about some pretty heinous stuff that goes
Okay.
on to even
Right.
get there.
Okay. So in terms of you discovering your hidden talent about becoming a criminal barrister and then obviously being an absolute awesome one, what I read on again Amp4 Talent that you had to represent yourself in trial. The first one, it was a hung jury. The second one, you got acquitted in under 90 minutes. How on earth did you? I mean, I guess suppose when you're in that type of situation, I can only assume your body just goes into kind of fight or flight mode. You know you have to do something to represent you. You have to do something to help yourself out. But how on earth did you pluck up the courage to do that?
Oh, it was either pluck up the courage to do that or potentially get locked up myself. I mean, it
Yeah,
was a malicious um allegation
yeah.
of violence against someone I know. I got embroiled in the situation, and then the person who was the so-called complainant turned it on us.
Mhm.
Unfortunate set of circumstances, but nonetheless, I just felt frustrated by the system. I felt I wasn't listened to by some solicitors firms. I wasn't listened to by some counsel, and then one finally I had a barrister that I really liked, and his case overrun, and then I just had enough. And then I decided to represent myself. And then the firm that I had at that time decided to work for free. And so I represented myself. So I was my own barrister, and then they stayed helping me with the litigation and hung jury the first time. I must admit, my speech wasn't up to par. And as much as the prosecutor in the first trial I really got on with, and the name was David Jenkins, 2 Kings Bench Walk, God rest his soul, he's no longer with us.
Mm.
But he was very naughty because there's a convention, and if it's an unrepresented defendant, you are not allowed to make a speech as prosecution. And he did. And had he not have done that, then it may be the case that I would have been acquitted on the first trial.
Oh my goodness. So he made a closing speech.
Yeah, and he shouldn't have done. You're not really. It's
Wow.
not, yeah. There's. I think it's a convention. I think it's bioethics as well. You shouldn't do that, and
Wow.
it's not permitted. So he did, and it was a bit naughty of him. And so and obviously hung jury. If that speech wasn't made, then I think
Mhm.
I'd have probably got it over the line. But then on the next retrial where
Yeah.
the prosecutor was fine, but he wasn't as nice as the first one, and then I
Mhm.
just knocked it out the park, despite the complainant being a lot more brazen because he knew what questions I was going to ask. I focused my questions, and my speech was, I knocked it out the park with a speech, and I saw the jury agreeing with everything I said, and lots of barristers came in and heard about me, and lots of barristers, some of them who are now silk, at least 2 of them, watched me. And they were like, "You need to come into the profession, and your line of cross-examination was better than those we've had on pupillage." So it was kind of a
Oh
miracle
my
story.
goodness.
And then the
And
officer who arrested me told me about becoming a accredited police rep. And then the solicitor's firm that was doing the litigation agreed to take me on as a probationary police rep, and then let the rest is history.
have you ever been instructed by that firm by any
Of
chance?
course. Yeah, I'm still instructed by them. Yeah. I've done loads of work. And so yeah, I did loads of work with those guys. And it's funny, I was
Unbelievable.
a police station representative, so I did work through them. Then
Mhm.
as you probably know, as many of you guys that are listening to this probably don't know, but I was a solicitor for a hot minute, and I
Yeah.
did a lot of work for them, and it was a good time to be a solicitor actually for me, because barristers weren't being sent to court because I qualified in the middle of COVID
Oh
when
wow.
it was locked down proper in 2020, and so I
Yeah.
qualified on the 1st of June 2020 as a solicitor. So everyone was in the mags. Crown courts weren't doing any business, and I heard of some people, barristers, actually one going to work in Sainsbury's because there was no money coming in. It was really,
Oh
really
my
bad.
goodness, that's horrific.
Chambers would refuse to send their pupils there. You had experienced seasoned barristers doing mag trials. So I came through at that time, and I was up against more senior barristers doing prosecution work in the mags because they needed to make money, and I was cleaning up. I was sometimes I was doing 7 appearances a day, and I absolutely smashed the mags in 3 months. And I did so much work in the mags when there was no Crown Court available. My old head of chambers wrote to the BSB and said, "Look, Mr. Robinson's got the prerequisite advocacy experience.
Mhm.
That we can't sensibly even offer him any form of pupillage because he's too experienced." And BSB said, "We
Yeah.
totally agree." And then I ended up with, after I'd done my higher rights, but I ended up with a total exemption of pupillage because it's right to say I'd done how much mags court trials and
Of
all
course.
kinds of work at that particular time, and there was very few pupils about because of unfortunately the lockdown situation. So I benefited from lockdown.
Yeah. So you essentially so when you did so obviously acquittals since even before becoming a barrister. So when you did that trial for yourself, what did you realise and can you refer it back to now as being a barrister? What have you realised that your top skill set is in terms of courtroom advocacy?
Uh, I just think I've got probably, is it a natural advocate, if that one can say such
Mm,
a thing, or a flair for it. Of people say advocacy's taught a lot. You need to learn the law, you need to learn the other skills, but I wasn't afraid to speak
yeah.
for myself, and I did leave that trial thinking, if I can do this for myself, imagine what I can do for someone else. Because my back was certainly against the wall, and if it had gone bad, I'm not really, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure the judge would have banged me up, and I think she was impressed that I represented myself. But um, yeah, again, it's not the same pressure as representing someone else. It's different, and it's funny that that same judge, I've been in front of her, I've appeared in front of her in the Court of Appeal, and
I
she
was just about to
remembered me,
ask.
and she we share the same surname. So,
Oh
it was
wow.
her and Dame Kema Grubb where I did an appeal, and Dame Kema Grubb, arguably one of the top judges in the land,
Hmm.
and another law lord, I can't recall his name, but they knew full well what I was because they were constantly grinning throughout my submissions, and I didn't really. I when I go to the Court of Appeal, I really try to really do a lot of my written work,
Yeah.
and so by the time I get there, I don't really have much to say. I just guide them through my written submissions. They said, "Look, do carry on, Mr. Robinson. The floor's yours." And so, I waffled on, and they're all grinning. And I thought, this is really spooky. And then they delivered the judgment
Mhm.
after lunch, and they came, and then the law lord that was there said that the judge named after me is going to deliver the judgment, and he goes, "No relation." I started laughing, and this
Oh
is
my
what she
goodness.
said to me every day to the jury through the trial. So I know she's obviously spoken to them, and so it was a moment where appearing in front of a judge of that seniority as a defendant, and
Hmm.
then coming back how many 4 years later as a barrister in the top chambers is something. And I dare say that's probably not been done before, but
No.
it really sunk in how far I've actually gone. I've come on my journey.
Mm, do you think it's fair for me to say that you are probably making history as a barrister?
Don't know about all that. It's a bit of a stretch, but yeah,
Really?
it's
I don't think it
no,
is.
if I'd say. Influencing people, yes,
Hmm.
making a difference because I'm not, people talk about traditional backgrounds. Well, if you're talking about non-traditional background, then I probably tick every single box. I mean, obviously talking about the obvious protected characteristics, I've got a
Hmm.
disability.
Hmm.
I was in care. I've had everything against me, like state school. I've had everything that generally would be considered an obstacle. I've had it, and I've still overcome it. And
Mm.
even to secure a secure training contract was maybe easier than securing a pupillage, but then you still have to find a firm that will take you on,
Mhm.
and then you still have to find the chambers that will take you on when you transfer. And so it was maybe easier, but not as easy as people might think. And of course, with my background, there was an extra challenge. And then when I left Great James Street to Garda Court, that was another eye opener because again, there was a couple of chambers that um I did get knocked back from that I applied for, and maybe they weren't the right fit. There was a couple of chambers that were interested that I said no to, and then at Garden Court we found each other in the most unusual way because it just started about then it started and ended about talking about football. And that
Wow.
was it. That was it. But thinking about where I'm at Garden Court, I always say that no other chambers would probably tolerate me, to be honest with you. I can go chambers. I think if you remember, I did that What Lawyers Look Like challenge.
Uh,
And
yes, and I know you did the another one as well that I've seen you appear on where you're like witness in the box as well. I think it's witness in the
in
box.
this
Is
box
it
with Nathan Allen
witness
Brown,
box? Sorry, yes.
a dear friend, yeah, who does that podcast. But What Lawyers Look Like challenge was me, and I was wearing a tracksuit because I've got like 10 tattoos.
Mm,
Pretty graffitied up here, one on my neck, if you can see it. Both my
yeah,
ears are pierced. I've got studs in today.
yeah.
But I go to chambers dressed as I want, baseball caps, hoodies. I've seen the head of chambers wearing a komodo. I've seen another member of chambers in their pajamas. You wouldn't get this in any other set apart from Garden Court. And so we're a very relaxed, liberal set. But it's the culture there that I suppose it enables me to be myself. I'm my authentic self there, and I don't try to be anything else but myself. And I suppose if anyone asks me about how I've become successful at the bus, because I just was myself. It's as simple as that. I've not tried or pretended to be a middle class white man of what many people think that barristers ought to be like that.
Mm.
I've just been me, and I think that's probably why I've been so successful later on in life at it.
I think as well, not to take away the fact that you've obviously got an impeccable skill set and you are just clearly a phenomenal advocate, but perhaps would you say it's fair to say that the way you most likely connect with your lay clients and just the person that you are also goes a long way as well. Because you do just seem so humble and so down to earth and actually I guess from having your experience you've seen potentially how not dangerous the CPS can be but how dangerous the criminal justice system can be in terms of like you, for example, had to go to trial for malicious allegations, and so maybe you can relate to your clients a little bit better. Would you say that's fair to say, or?
Yeah, no, most definitely. And
Mhm.
a lot of the young people I deal with, I was in their shoes. When I was young, I got into quite a bit of trouble. And to be honest with you, growing up in London in the early 90s or late 80s and being black, you'd just be arrested for nothing. I've literally walked
Mm.
down the road, been picked up by the police, put in a van, and I've asked why I've been arrested, and they've been as brave as say it's because you're black and you fit the description, and that's it. And that happened a lot. Stopped and searched every day on the way home from school. I've been beaten up by the police when I was 15, really badly, smashed up my face. It was a way of life then. And
Oh
so
my
a lot of
goodness.
people think that we make these things up, but it was the truth. And so I know what it's like to be on the wrong side of the dock,
Mm.
whether
Yeah.
it's adult court or youth court, and I've done nothing wrong. Do you know what I mean? Even though I was a little scallywag when I'm not saying I was completely innocent. I was a little rascal, and I was definitely an as I should we've definitely had an ASBO when I was 15, 16. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say that I was completely innocent, but I think I can relate because I can say to these young people, these youths, that I walked your path. I was in your
Mm.
shoes. I'm not just talking the talk. I can more than just relate to it. I was that guy, but I turned things around for myself. Firstly through music, and then progressed from that to what I do now. And so I try to gain their trust and confidence,
Yeah.
and the vast majority of cases, not all, but the vast majority, I do win their confidence, and especially when it's things like the evidence is overwhelming and they really do need to plead guilty. There's a lot of distrust in the criminal
Mm.
justice system, especially from the young black males. And you'll see the statistics in terms of things like the Lammy Review, if you've ever had a
Yeah.
chance to read that. And
Yeah.
a lot of that comes from is that the young black males, where it's skewed, is that they just don't want to enter early guilty pleas because they think they're
Mm.
gonna get banged up or whatever, and they delay the inevitable. And it's not always the case. The vast amount of judges, especially in the Crown Court I've been with, have generally been quite fair and reasonable. And
Yeah.
and, and so it's just that trust, holding their hand for the process, you know what I mean, taking that extra time to talk about my journey so then I can bring that on them onto a level so they can
Level.
actually trust me. I'm not just here to get paid and then go on to the next case. Like I feel you, you understand? I've
Yeah.
been in your shoes. Like, I've lived the life that you have lived, but I'm here to tell the tale that you can change. But let us just get through this bit. Let me hold your hand and we'll get through this together. Do you understand? And even if it's a custodial sentence, yeah, and not for the serious stuff, but generally, not everyone I work with is getting life sentences or banged up for years.
Hmm.
So what I say to those guys that might be ending up with a 2 or 3 years is, look, as bad as it is for you, how much man are in your wing that's doing life sentences? And oh yeah, this one, that one. Like I say, you're going to be out in a couple of years. You're going to be able to start a family. You can turn your life around, have kids. In 20 years' time, those guys are still going to be here. I would have retired from the bar, yeah, and could have a successful career or successful business.
Wow.
Think about that when you're upset about the 2 years that you're going to have to spend in the cell. It's not long. Your life is not over. You can
No.
turn things around, and so that's my approach.
Yeah, and I think in a little video that I did yesterday, I think one of the biggest things I said throughout that video on the recurring theme was just that, no matter how grueling your life was from a young age, and I'm just going off what I read on the article, which is nowhere near probably as much as but just no matter how much you had a grueling start and how much the odds were completely against you, you just have completely flipped it around and made life what you want to make it. And I think that's a huge message to send out to so many young people, that even when the odds are against you, whether it's family difficulties or friendship difficulties or worse, crime and things like that, that there's just more to life than going on that path,
Yeah,
and you are just
100%.
living proof. And also, just I guess the message as well that I definitely certainly take from you is you can do anything as long as you put your mind to it. Now, I mean, we might not have the skill set that you do and the intelligence that you do always, but if you have the passion, um you can do anything that you put your mind to. Would you say that that's quite fair as well?
Yeah, it's true. But you know what? One thing I've been watching some videos, these inspirational videos and that, and
Yeah.
I've looked at it, and someone said something interesting. That I watched a film with Anthony Mackie, who's the new Captain America, and he
Okay.
said, you know what? One thing I've just considered is that success isn't earned; it's you're chosen. And
Hmm.
so I do think that it was my time and I was
Yeah.
chosen. Yes, you can do anything you put your mind to, but there does have to be chosen. It's just like football, Premier League football players. They
Yeah.
could pick you. You could be out of 100, and if it's your time, it's your time. So in terms of what I've achieved, then I do guess that it was my time. Having said that, yeah, you need to be focused and disciplined, and I do believe
Yeah.
if you truly work hard and you dedicate yourself to something, you'll be successful. I put everything in the kitchen sink to my studies. I locked off everyone, friends. I stopped drinking. I stopped getting out. I'd literally be in the library weekends, Saturdays, all of Sundays. Didn't talk to no one. I literally shut down. No one didn't see me. And I stayed that way up until my third year when I got my training contract in my second year. So I think I got a bit lazy in my third year. But my first and second year, certainly I was a ghost, and I threw everything out. And so I think you need to it's dedication, if you're
Mm.
determined, if you want to be the best athlete, do you know what I mean, or the best doctor, whatever you're doing in life, you really need to apply yourself to it and make it your life's work. It goes beyond just being a barrister. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And also just a question about your childhood. So the negatives that you experienced in your childhood, from being a baby and having to go through care proceedings, and then getting into adolescence and having some difficulties there. What positives now, looking back, do you take from those situations, if any?
You know what? More empathy of people that's been in my situation, and I think
Hmm.
I think it just adds to me as a character, to be honest with you. And, through all of the adversity that I've gone through, and believe me, there's been so much.
Hmm.
I've still been able to be successful in life. And as I said, I give God thanks. I never ever thought that I'll be in this position. And I hope to just I suppose the positives, I hope to just inspire and other people, not just to achieve coming to law, but bigger than that, to just achieve their dreams. And
Yeah.
what I would say is someone in the music industry to show a lot of these young people that there is more to life than just music. Do you know what I mean? I think education is a wonderful thing, and so
Yeah.
getting a professional qualification that they can't take away from you, like recording contracts are temporary. You can be the man 1 minute, and then it's all done the next. But
Mm.
with education, the professional qualification, architecture, or something like that, you know what I mean? It don't have to be law, business, or
Yeah.
whatever. You can go into a field and really make something of yourself. And people need to understand that look, we live in a very materialistic time, and
Yeah.
young people are focused on the materialistic things. But you can achieve and have everything you want. Um, cars, houses, yeah, and you can just for the sake of having a degree and studying, you can still have a job that pays you a six figure salary, and you're
Yeah.
nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so true. And as well, coming into um probably a really amazing financial state. I mean, what's the best holiday that you've ever been on?
Mate. Alright, so the year before last, we went to across the states, and I think I did
Wow.
New York, Philly, Atlanta, Miami, and we did it upper class. And
Wow.
it's not that I went all bougie or I'm loaded. It's just that like, I was saving my air miles. And then the holiday
Yes.
before that, they stuffed up my ride that I got, and so Virgin gave me 10,000 extra miles. So I used it to get my flights. Me and my
Mm,
wife both got like 10,000 extra miles, so we used it. We went
that's
upper class, and then
amazing.
the time before that, we got a really good deal, and we went Jamaica, and we did
Wow.
that upper class, and we went across Jamaica, and we stayed in a private hotel on the other side of the island where only Beyonce and the cast of Power stayed in,
What?
and we got our own service, our own plunge pool. It was
Oh my
sick.
goodness.
And then before
Imagine if Beyonce was there, I think I would have just simply passed away, to be
I would have
honest.
wanted it, I wanted the hotel to myself, which I got.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
true
and then
actually.
before that, we did it again. We went to New York, and then we
Hmm.
went to Philly, and then we went to Jamaica for a wedding, and I was best
Wow.
man. And then we came back to Miami, and then we went from Miami, and then we went to that club in Fontainebleau. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a
Oh wow.
well-known club. And then we went to New Orleans, and
Wow.
then we went back to New York to do shopping for the last few days. And so yeah, we've had some sick holidays. So yeah, it's good. I think to have a really good holiday.
Hmm.
And I say this because um if you work in a professional setting, and whether you're a solicitor, barrister, and you earning good salary, you can have these things, a nice house, a nice car. These things will come, and it might come earlier on in practice. And so it's all those young people that are barking up the wrong tree on this road life, are looking for this music deal that will never come. A professional life, there's nothing wrong with it. Do you know what I mean? I do very well, and I try to inspire kids that for the sake of 3 years of study, your life could change. You could get a dream
Mm.
job where you have everything that you want and more. Do you
Yeah.
understand?
I was the same. I went to college and A levels. I couldn't stand it. The only best part I enjoyed about A levels was getting a lanyard to go out and get a coffee, and then I would just never return back to college, to be honest. And it got to the point it was so bad. I used to hide in a bush and stuff before going to college, and my mum would think I'd gone to the bus stop, and I hadn't. I was in a bush around the corner hiding. And she did catch me in the bush, and I was mortified. But she gave me the same talk, and just go for the sake of a day in lessons, grow up. What else are you going to be doing sitting at home watching Netflix? And that's exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go to lessons. I was bored stiff. But actually, when I engaged, I enjoyed the learning. I loved it. I loved listening to what the teachers were telling me, and I loved building a rapport with the teachers as well. And the teachers became like my agony aunts. I'd tell them all the gossip, and I really got along with them in the end. But I think sometimes, as speaking for the young generation, sometimes we just lack the motivation and don't
Yeah.
see the bigger picture. And it's sad because that difference in university, I made the same mistake again. There was certain times in year one where I should have been there every day learning stuff, and I didn't. I fobbed it off because I was hungover, and it's just not appropriate really when you think about it. For the sake of a 3 years degree, it goes like that, because it's not 3 years, it's less than 3 years really. and it goes like that, and you don't make the most of it, it can be really tough.
Yeah, no, and indeed, I mean, my degree went reasonably quickly. What dragged was my LPC, and it's mad
Wow.
because I did it part time while I was doing my training contract, and all of us, because we all went London Met, and we were all doing evening classes, and every single one of us all had, barring about one or two students, we all had training contracts. So
Oh
the
my God.
attitude, real right, Jack. This is because we're
Yeah.
good. We're studying because we have to. Like no one no one was bothered about results because all we needed to do is get the 50% pass mark because we're already in the
Right.
job. So every single one of us, we were good.
Hmm.
And so, again, I think that seemed to drag because I just had at that point I'd had enough of studies.
Yeah.
Must admit, I've toyed with the idea of doing a doctorate, but my practice is developed in such a state. I think doing anything more than I already do would probably tip me over the edge. I actually, and talking about the bar, actually, I have a really good work-life balance, and not a lot of barristers can say that. I
Mhm.
don't really think I work beyond more than 40 hours a week, if that. Do you know what I
Wow.
mean?
And in the recent Criminal Bar Association study, it's saying that's a survey that most barristers are working 60, 70 hours plus. So that's unbelievable that you're managing to get under 40 hours.
not the work. I look at the work I'm doing. So no,
Yeah,
and
massive
I
cases as well.
and I'm selective as well. I think
Mm,
I don't. One wonderful thing with Garden Court is work is not forced upon you. You're
mhm.
always asked. And so I think and it's a democracy, so they don't just send you out anywhere. They don't put things in your diary.
Okay.
And so I'm able to maintain that work-life balance. And so also I don't overload my diary anymore. I
Mm,
select what I want to do, and I only generally do what's called CTL cases, which is custody time limit cases. So because the
okay.
stuff I do is really quite serious, everyone's on remand,
Of
which
course.
means that I don't do warn lists, which is cases
Right.
that may or may not come in. And so
Okay.
it's enabled me to have more my diary clearer than
Mm,
maybe other juniors in my position. But coupled with that as well, I do dabble, I do take a lot of time out, do the reg stuff, and which New Park Court and big them up as well. New Park Court have been absolutely wonderful. And
mhm.
they're at home from away from home, and they've been incredibly supportive to the other
Yeah.
side of my practice. So again, you have to make it work, but down to the chambers you go to. And sadly, if you're a junior, you will be expected to do this, go here
Mm,
and there. But just Garden Court just doesn't have that policy. We just don't enforce things like that on our juniors. You work at your own pace, and I very
mm,
much do. I'm very much in control of my diary and the work I want to do and take on. And yeah, if I did a bit more, could I make a bit more money? Probably. But am
mm.
I happy? Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
And the similarities between being a DJ, so of course that probably would have been late hours, networking, connections with people, obviously bringing love and happiness to people through music, and you're doing bringing love and happiness to people through legal supporting. But what would you say is like really similar to being a DJ with a barrister, if you can pull any similarities?
Quite a lot, but I mean, but having said that, when I was a DJ, I used to go out on the lash a lot, and so
Yeah. What was your diary
actually,
like as a DJ? Packed.
yeah, it was quite busy,
Hmm.
and relatively busy, and sometimes would be more busier than others. I remember I did once
Right.
14 gigs in a week, and that was off the back of
Oh my
doing a
God.
tour across the west coast of America, coming back, playing out 14 nights over Christmas. I mean, 14 gigs over Christmas. So sometimes you do 3 or 4 gigs a night across the country, and then going to do two different gigs in two parts of Germany on New Year's, and I was absolutely whacked. But I'd say the similarities are as a DJ, you have an agent, as a barrister, I have a clerk. It's the same thing,
Mm,
same function. They both are there to manage your diary and kind of help you manage your work or bring in work for you. The traveling, I travel, a lot of the towns I travel to Crown Courts is the
mm.
same places I've actually DJed in most of these towns. So like, I did a trial in Leeds before Christmas. I've done Manchester, I've done Birmingham, I've done Stoke-on-Trent, and all these places, Nottingham, and all these places that I do trials in, I've actually DJed in all the local clubs there as well. So it's kind of mad. And also
Wow.
performing as well. So I used to perform to a packed club. Now I
Hmm.
just perform to 12 juries, albeit that I'm speaking instead of mixing, but there are
Yeah.
similarities. But I think the main thing is it's being used to being self-employed. A lot of
Mm.
people that junior barristers, being the self-employed thing, they struggle. And I've seen some of my friends drop out because they couldn't handle it, and it takes a few months to build that income to come in. Because I've been self-employed all my life as a DJ, or most of my professional working career. I have worked and I've done some, when I was in the transition from DJing into the law, I was doing some other jobs and I was a concierge and did all manner of things. But it's the self-employed thing wasn't a shock to me. So I took
No.
to it like a duck to water. But of course, the other things, DJing, like, the mad partying and the drinking, all that, I don't really, I mean, I had a birthday party the other day, but generally I don't go out on the lash or anything like that anymore. I'm
Mhm.
a bit past all that, to be honest with you. I like
What's
peace and quiet.
yeah, what is your favorite music, or what was your favorite music as a DJ?
Jungle drum and bass without a shadow of a doubt,
Yeah.
100% off the top. And then obviously
Unreal.
garage, but I like tech house. I love
Yeah.
soulful house.
Yeah.
I'm very much into the dance music stuff. A bit of R&B, like the older stuff, and a bit of the older real hip hop. Not really a
Mm.
fan of the new stuff, but I will
Mm.
listen to it if I got. But the proper traditional hip hop, like Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, that kind of thing. And yeah, but I like rock, I can listen to a bit of Led Zeppelin. I play drums. I like blues. I played in the drums in a blues club before. I really into jazz. Into
Hmm.
jazz fusion. I like classical. If I want to relax, more so in the winter, I'll put on the classical music. Crack open a bottle of wine, do some work, and so I've got an eclectic taste. I'm into all things.
And so sometimes you need to do some work, you'll put some music on, have a bottle of wine. But what would you say your holy grail is in attempted murder cases? Well, all the cases that you do are quite serious anyway. So what's your holy grail before starting trial or during trial?
What do you mean, Holy Grail? What
Like,
gold?
what's your, have you got a routine? Have you got a little thing that you need to do to get yourself into the zone? Like, or is there something that you like to do when you're in the middle of these things to make sure that you're,
Not really. I just get on and
oh,
do the job, and I'm already thinking ahead about my next trial as well. It's just,
mm,
I've got a very forensic like approach to work. I
mhm,
plan everything. I try to run my diary as tight as I can.
yeah,
Once I'm locked into trial, I'm thinking about the trial, but I've got one eye on what's coming next, so I don't drop the
yeah,
ball. And so
right,
there's no, obviously you're always reading, you're always preparing and everything, but I think there's nothing, there's no ritual that I will do. I think the things I don't do is I suppose go out so much, and I'll
mm,
just be in that kind of locked down mode.
zone.
I'll be in that mode that it's work. So, I probably might not go out or do social things, but it depends what kind of case it is as well. Some things are more easy than others. So, a simple case it just depends. But yeah, there's not really no secret. I wouldn't start eating certain food or suddenly turn vegan during the course of the trial or won't drink. That's not me. Having said that, I don't do lunchtime drinking anymore.
No,
And
I've heard some barristers come in drunk actually.
I learned that the hard way when I had a trial in Portsmouth when I started out, and
Right,
lovely prosecutor, dear guy, and he used to take me out to lunch. And it was the best beer. It had a brewery there, and the food was
nice.
wonderful. The best homemade pies,
Love
and it
that.
was homemade stout, and it was the nectar of the gods.
Hmm.
And we'd have one or two, but when you're just on the edge, like, I'm not saying I was drunk, not at all,
No,
but
but you're just
you're a
on the
bit
edge, tipsy.
lethargic. You've had a
Yeah.
heavy lunch, pie and mash or all the artisan food, and then you've had a couple of pints, and I wasn't as sharp as I could be, so I was like, you know what? No,
Go
so
on.
I learned my lesson.
The reason I ask is because I don't know if you've seen all over the Instagram, well, all over the internet at the moment, people are now doing this thing where they eat 10 grapes under the table and it brings you luck apparently. So I was just
It
wondering.
brings you luck.
Apparently so, yeah. So, and I mean, I am going to try it obviously because I'm like massive on stuff like that. I'll do it just before people are trying to like sit under the table, like a little right under the table eating grapes. But yeah, I was just wondering if there's anything that you do similar
I'm
to
not
that.
superstitious. You know what? One thing I'd say is that I'd sometimes I wear a particular suit. I've got this black pinstripe suit.
Yeah,
Um, in fact, you know what?
sure.
I'll actually show you. Is it here? Or is it? No, it's not missed out. I think
Oh no.
it's in the dry cleaners. I've got this pinstripe suit because this is my new office that we're in my new home, and so I've got
Oh
all my
wow.
bicycle gear here. But no, it's a specific black pinstripe suit, and if you see me wearing that, then I'm not messing around.
You know it's on.
I don't come to, I'm not playing around. If you see me wearing that, and that's generally when I'm gonna do cross-examination, I'll be wearing that suit. And another thing is I'm quite lazy, and I think it's London thing as well. We don't wear ties. The Northern Circuit, everyone wears ties. We just wear tunic shirts down south. But if it's a certain court, if you see me going to Old Bailey or Southwark,
You wear a tie.
I'll always be wearing a tie. If you see me like Wood Green or Inner London, I won't bother. But
Okay.
when it's Bailey or when it's Southwark, because there's always media or the Court of Appeal as well. If you're if it's Southwark or yeah Bailey, and because the amount of press that's going to be outside there,
You'll put tie
you're
on.
always getting photographed. And to
Oh
be fair,
wow.
there's not a proper robing room in the Court of Appeal, and so my
Okay.
chambers is just the back of it, like Garden Court in Lincoln's Inn Fields.
Oh
So
okay.
often we'll all be banded up when
Right.
we walk around there, so we already have our stuff on and just walk straight in there. So
Yeah.
I would already have my stuff on. So, but I've been photographed endless times going in there because you got all the big cases of the day that go on in there. So it's yeah,
I'll be
but
like, get the right angle.
yeah, it's not even for vanity, but you don't want to be looking like a tramp either.
No,
So
absolutely
yeah,
not. No, I get that.
and I do believe look the part. I encourage anyone's pupils if you're your first day on your feet, you honestly, Ellie, invest in yourself.
Yeah.
Buy a pair of loops. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Get the handbag. You need to be the lawyer. One thing is that they look at us. And
Yeah.
so, if you're dressed like a tramp, they're not going to think you're a good lawyer. If you're dressed to the nines, yeah, you're dressed to kill. They think she means business. You know,
Yeah.
what I mean? The way you dress, you will look serious. You'll
Yeah.
look successful. You'll look serious. And so, I've invested in quite a lot of custom suits, and
No.
I really try to ensure that I look sharp. And I've invested
Mhm.
in my wardrobe, my professional wardrobe, a lot more than my probably off-duty wardrobe because it's again you need to look the part. It is very important.
Yeah.
People do judge you, and you're not going to be
False.
respected in the same way if you just turned up like a tramp. You need to, your client needs to see you looking the business because if you look the business, that's gonna boost your own confidence, and then
Exactly.
you're gonna increase your client's confidence in you, and then that increases the trust. Yeah, and you look
Yeah.
like a woman that's not to be messed with. Do you
I
understand?
actually, it's so funny that you said actually, because I'm a court clerk at the moment, and I wear my heels all the time. I always wear my little blazer with the gold buttons. I'm in a nice
Yeah.
dress, and it's because it gives me exactly what you just said there, a sense of confidence as well,
Mm.
and I feel a lot more like just better in myself. And I'm only doing like an administrative role,
That's
but
still an
even still,
important role.
yeah, but even still, I completely agree. It's all about self care, isn't it? And being proud of what you're wearing and proud of who you are. And people take you seriously then as well.
Even yeah, exactly. Even the mags, and I always try to get a trim. I need to get my hair cut tomorrow, so I ain't trimmed at the moment. But again, I've got these because I don't need to conform so much in the mags, especially when I was
Yeah.
qualified. I've got in there. I've worn a purple suit
Mhm.
like in the mags before. I wear some outrageous stuff, but I'll go in there. I've got some trilby hats. I'd wear a long
Wow.
barber jacket, and again,
Love that.
people all eyes on you. But the point is that you look like you mean business, and people will respect you. Do you know what I mean? It's
Oh,
a
they
serious
will.
job.
And they'll probably think that well, yeah, you are right, definitely. I agree. So, another thing is, how do you deal with if you've got like a pro prosecution judge and you are defending or vice versa?
All the time. But you know what? Manners maketh
Yeah,
the man, and I'm always polite. I'm always there to try to assist the court. I'll tell them that. And and save for one or two judges, one judge I've completely fallen out with before,
Mhm.
but save for that, I've always tried to get on well with judges, and even the most obnoxious ones to everyone else, I try to be polite. I always try
Mm.
to be helpful as much as I can, assist the call, and most of them will always thank me for it. I've had
Mhm.
some of the judges that most people have got nothing good to say about, but me and them have been fine, and they've always thanked me at the end. And so I try to be nice and to everyone I meet. And that's just me as a person, to just be nice in it. Like this job is it's a privilege. It's not all right to be a barrister. And
No.
so you just to me it's just about to be nice to everyone. And I
I
try
think
to get on
being
with everyone.
I think being a barrister, though, I think, as you said earlier on about being chosen, I definitely think it was your calling in life 100% from just what I've seen of you already, which is so little. But I mean, yeah, I think anyone can say that you are on the track of potentially being the best one in the country, hopefully. I'm praying.
But I don't know about all of that.
I think so,
It's
100%.
far better
Well,
than me.
we've
Maybe
got
the
no, not a
nicest, maybe
chance.
the nicest, the nicest one in the
Yeah,
country, the friendliest barrister. Yeah, I'll do that. I wouldn't mind winning the award for being the most friendly barrister, but
yeah.
anything else, I don't know, a bit of a stretch.
So we're coming to an hour now, but we've got three
Mm.
questions that has been sent in for you, and
Yeah.
I've promised the students I'd ask them. So the first one is, may you just talk about any threats that you've had whilst working at the criminal bar? Last week they had a lecture by Jim Sturman, King's Counsel, who expressed how he'd been threatened. Can you relate to that?
Never been threatened.
Never.
Big,
Maybe
that,
that's
that,
why.
I'm a big guy. I'm 6 foot odd, and yeah, I just have that demeanor where it don't happen. One client was a bit mouthy once, and I put him in his place, and
No.
and
Yeah.
and then he resigned from his position. I just, the same way I was kind of when it comes to that nonsense before I came to the bar is the same way, and I deal with things robustly, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it's not gonna happen. I just
Yeah.
don't have it. That's what
No.
I'm not saying it couldn't, but I just
I
put it
think you
down.
just don't take it.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm
just
I'm just not that
enough.
I'm just not that guy. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm just not that guy. It's not
No.
me. I'm not that
It's
guy.
not going to happen.
I'm a big guy.
I
I'm
don't think
just
people
not.
would try it anyway, to be quite
Yeah.
frank. I think they
Yeah, they
just
might they might
realise
do.
it could
They
work.
have done, but I've dealt with them in a way that I'm not saying threatening them back or
No,
anything,
but just
but
frank.
I'm just robust and you
Yeah.
just knowing it. I'm just not that guy. It's just
No.
not simple as that.
There you go, Amber. There's your
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
And Honey has asked, what are some of the worst things you've witnessed and how have you dealt with them?
That's blatant sexism. A
Hmm.
female colleague, and the judge was an absolute pig to
Wow.
record that. He was a civil record, and he just constantly criticised her. And it's funny, me as a black man, and she as a white woman, and he had it in for her. And it was a upper middle class white man, but he proper had it in for her. And any submission she made shut down, and she was prosecuting me, but he was just horrible. And in the
Wow.
end, he criticized her about her hair, saying you should not have your hair like that. It was in a very perfectly reasonable bob. And he criticized her about the hair and said it should be tied
Wow.
back and don't come to court like in front of him. And she was really upset. And I,
Wow.
I, I was disgusted.
That's appalling. That is really
And,
appalling. I mean,
and,
I can't
and
imagine
I,
the confidence knock.
No, and I offered if she wanted to make a complaint, I said, look, I'll support
Oh,
you.
yeah.
I don't think she did, but it was bang out of order. I don't tolerate bullying. Again, it goes back to what you said about the first question. I'm
Mm,
not gonna have that either. So if I see a colleague being dealt with unfairly, I will step in.
mm,
You know,
no.
it is what it is. So I've seen that kind of thing. And in terms of client wise.
Yeah.
I think I see someone get done from contempt of court where they called the judge a bitch and then they called the prosecutor an ugly C word. That bit made me laugh.
Right.
But yeah,
I
I
think that was
really
really
like
good.
I really like the judge, and so she dealt with it robustly, and she gave him
Hmm.
6 weeks, and he was a prosecution witness.
Yeah.
And she said it's not personal, but it's the office, and you
Yeah.
need to respect the office. So she was right. I said, really respected judge. I really like her,
Yeah.
and she did the right thing. But I wasn't impressed by that, and I think that the
No.
public really need to have respect of the court
Yeah.
because
And
They,
also setting those boundaries as well. You just don't do that in court. We get
yeah.
it a lot in family law when there's private cases because they're bringing the private proceedings. They think that they are above the law,
Mm.
and the way they speak to the judges, whether that's because there isn't an element of formality there with the wigs and the gowns, is absolutely despicable. I mean, there's been times where I've been, I'm supposed to be neutral as the court clerk, and I've not been able to hide my emotions. I've been like, what on earth? Like shouting at the judge during the judgment and things. I'm like,
Uh,
oh my goodness.
if I was a judge, I think, I'd be fair, but I would be robust and
Yeah,
I would be tough. I'm not gonna lie.
absolutely.
I'd be very tough. If you come in front of me and there's any of that nonsense, I'm sending you to the cells. I would be tough.
No, you have to as well. And I think what you said, it's about setting boundaries and like actually showing that there's a level because I think if not, people do take the mick.
Mm.
And I think then the courts start to be seen in a weakened state and the members of the judiciary are seen as just whatever, you can do whatever you want because there's not enough spaces in the cells or whatever, or no, I'm
Time to get
sorry.
tough.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Um, what would you give, a piece of advice you'd give to secondary students that perhaps you give when you're doing lawyers at large? And also maybe, and by the way, this podcast episode will get sent around to secondary schools that I've connected with in the areas. And yeah, I mean, just to touch on that real quickly, I mean, lawyers at large is just phenomenal. Another real great thing that Mark is involved, well, that is actually running, and I no doubt people will probably ask me about that. So if with your permission, I can pass them on to
Of
the
course,
website if
permission
that's
granted.
fine. Thank you. So yeah, so a bit of advice you'd give to secondary students, and advice you'd give to young aspiring barristers that are maybe going into pupillage next year, like myself.
Right, so I think advice. I think in secondary school students definitely you need to. It's the grades and just start working on your CV. If you're not going to Oxbridge, that's another layer, sadly, that we find in the profession. So you really, less so probably north of the country, down south, it's a real problem. As far as
Yeah,
I'm concerned, a lot of people try to lie and say, and I'll call it out what it is. A lot of people try to lie and say it's not an issue. It is.
yeah,
Class is a problem at the bar, and it's definitely a problem in the south of the country. Um, get your CV up to par, have good working knowledge of the area you want to specialize in.
yeah,
And if you're not Oxbridge, try or Harvard or I mean Ivy League, try and get a first in your studies. If you are Oxbridge, then the floor is yours, and that's what I've been seeing in
yeah,
terms of people going into pupillage, because again, Oxbridge is just a means to get you in the door. It means absolutely nothing when you're
yeah,
there because the trial judge is not going to say to you at the start of the trial, what university did you go to? It's not going to happen. And
yeah,
so work hard. Your clerks. You need to just obey your clerks. I think whilst you're there, as a pupil, do everything that's asked for you because you don't want people turning on you. Be over helpful always, or put yourself out. And then in your first year, put yourself out to take on more work as well. Always, like what I used to do in my first year of practice, I used to just phone up my clerks from sometimes, so look, or in advance to say, look, is there anything that you need help with today? I'm available, and I'd put myself out. And even at Garden Court, sometimes I'll say, look, if there's anything at a particular court, because
hmm
my mum lives over by Snaresbrook Crown Court, and my daughter lives over there as well. So I'd say, like, if there's anything you need assistance with, I'm going to be over that way, and I'm more than happy to step in. And they really
wow,
appreciate and value that, and that gets you
yeah,
in the good books. Again, because the way Garden Court runs, they don't really. If you say you don't want to do something, it's not held against you. Other chambers will.
okay,
So always
yeah,
be that over helpful counsel, and your clerks will love you. And the
okay,
clerks are part of the decision making process in tenancy. Not I
yeah,
didn't know that, but they will have a say. So if you've impressed the clerks and you're really helpful,
yeah,
that and another thing as well, that a lot of you baby barristers forget and pupils, always phone your instructing solicitor after the
yes,
hearing. Yeah, these solicitors don't know you from Adam, and you need to be building your network and
yeah, of course, because
relationship
they
for
get you your business, don't they?
going
Really?
out for drinks,
Yeah,
dinners, whatever. Good thing. Obviously, as a woman, you need to set your parameters because there are still some unscrupulous individuals out there.
yeah,
But always phone your solicitors. That I think it's just good manners and common decency. Some barristers I've heard don't do that. You must. I think that should be drummed into you. That as soon as you finish that case, you get their number, you phone them. You're going to do your attendance night anyway, but you will
Yeah.
phone them because then you will start to build that rapport with your solicitors, and if they like you, you know, and it's not about being acquittals. It's not about
No.
get it's the results based. It's you establishing that relationship with your solicitors, and once you've got that, then you'll end up generating a supply of work, and that's more for the defense. Obviously, CPS is faceless, so you'll just if you're on the panel, you'll just get the work allocated to you, and it won't. It won't be such a big deal because you're not going to have a relationship with any particular individual.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
in the
you
same
just,
way you will if you have a defense practice. But any other area of law, whether it's housing or family or immigration,
yeah.
again, always build that relationship with your solicitors. Your solicitors and your clerks are the most important people in your practice outside of your family and
Hmm.
maybe your faith. Yeah. Your solicitors and your clerks, you need to have a relationship with them, and always, always choose that one clerk. I have
Yeah.
my one clerk who is my go-to guy, and it's the same with my last chambers as well. I always have that one person
One.
who that like you get on well with everyone, but you make sure that you've got that one person who's got you. So again, it's relationships is important and networking as well. Gone are the days when barristers can think that they can just sit there and the clerks will just give them work. You're lucky if you've got it like that, but you really
Mm.
need to be self-sufficient because if I'm self-sufficient, I can they call it clerking yourself. I've got my own following of solicitors.
Yeah.
I get all the work is much generally off of my own back, and I've gone out there to build relationships with these solicitors, and that's what young barristers need to do. Don't think going to a chambers and be reliant. Unless you want a prosecution practice, then fine, you don't need to worry about that so much. But defense work, you need to, and any other areas of law, you need to build those relationships and again, don't be a shrinking violet. Be out there, be visible, and be friendly. Don't be an arsehole.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
don't be that one that you're great at your job, but no one really likes you. That'll only get you so far. You need to be people need to feel some warmth and some
Mm.
personality. Do you know what I mean? You need being nice. There's nothing wrong with being nice.
Be
And
nice.
so I pride myself in being a nice guy. Ain't saying that I'm the world's greatest barrister. I've got a brain like Lord Sumption or Denning or whatever, but I try my very best when I go out there to just be nice to everyone I meet and just be nice. Do you know what I mean? Be humble, be nice. You're not
Yeah.
God.
Well, I just can't thank you enough, Mark, honestly. And I'm sure everybody who's going to watch this is going to say thank you so much. And can everybody have permission to follow you on LinkedIn if they want
LinkedIn,
to?
yeah,
Yeah,
LinkedIn, we
yay!
love
Thank
it.
you very much. Honestly, I can't thank you enough. You are nothing short of inspiring for all of us. And everybody has responded saying they follow you, so that just speaks in itself. Speaks volumes. I can't thank you enough for your time today as well on your day off. We can't wait to keep on watching your success grow and following
Thank
you.
you.
And again, just thank you so much. And I hope I get to see you in court in the north soon. I'll be the first there at the queue, being like, please let me in. I need to.
Cool.
Okay, well,
Right.
thank you so much.
Wonderful.
And yeah, okay, well, we can't thank you enough, anyways, Mark. And thank you very much. And have a fantastic weekend, relaxing and celebrating your win as well.
Take care, though. Take care. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so
Bye.
much. See you soon, Mark. Bye.
Bye.